Okay, moving right along. Tonight is Hints and Kinks and Show and Tell. So, let's see, where should we start? I tell you what, that little amplified speaker there, that is Show and Tell? The little amplified speaker? Is that Show and Tell? It is. Or is it? All right, now look, is that Show and Tell?
It is Show and Tell. It's a tradium. It's one of those things that's yours? Yes.
Oh, well, no. Well, that's... No. That's the point.
Does it look like an amplified speaker to you?
Yes, from here it does.
It's for the auction stuff.
All right, John, step up. John.
Hold it.
Give each person the lapel mic. Too.
All right.
Stage mother.
It's pretty scruffy. What are you doing? I don't know.
Oh, what's in there? Okay, Marvin is set.
Okay.
And now, who are you?
Smith. First, I do want to give a quick shout out to, not because he's recording me and taking my picture, he's going to make me look fat again in the broadcaster, but I want to give a shout out to Marv for the great job that he does with the newsletter. He really does a nice job.
For how many years?
For
23.
Oh.
So,
there's no pause in that at all.
yeah. And as often happens when I'm down in the basement looking for, I don't find what I'm looking for, but I find something else. So we had that article on Tradio, and in the last broadcast of the coin operator radios, and here's a Tradioette in kind of crummy condition, but, and as you can see, the coin mechanism has been removed and replaced with this handy dandy switch. I didn't do this. This was done when I got this came for, I guess, a couple dollars from the, I don't know if any of you, I know Ray does, remembers the Krantz auction back about 98 or 99, Frank Krantz. And he had a tag on everything. And most of the tags said, hold, save, that's why he ended up with all that stuff. But this one says Radioette, metal case radio, plays but has some hum, uses 6 small 7-pin type tubes. And a homemade tag. But it actually, I plugged it in for giggles, and even with this little bit of an antenna, it actually plays pretty well. So it's...
So you're saying there used to be a coin box there?
There was a coin, I don't even know what the mechanism looked like, but there was a coin mechanism of some sort over here, and this is one of those no-tell-motel radios. And,
I wouldn't know about that.
yeah.
Yeah, those were specifically made to be in like restaurants or cafes and things, and they had to play well because they weren't hooked up to a main antenna. Each individual radio
Has its own.
Antenna, right?
So
they need to really be very sensitive, and that's why they are a relatively good radio.
And I realize it's in kind of crummy condition, but I thought since it was topical with the recent article in the...
We're going to try to get one for the museum.
You want this one? Somebody can paint it, It probably did. That's what's gone.
We're going to try to get a complete one with a timer there, so people can put in a coin and...
Yeah, that would be... Take this one if you want. Okay.
All right, thank you, John.
Oh.
All right, Tom, you want him up?
Give me a wallet. This thing in my pocket.
Okay, my name is Tom Provost. Does it work? Oh, I thought this worked.
That's for the camera.
Oh, okay. My name is Tom Provost, and this is a Steve Strong chassis stand that I've been reading about for a number of years on Antique Radio Forum. And everybody was very enthusiastic about it, so I decided to get one. So they come in two different sizes. This is the larger of the two sizes. And he makes them, Steve Strong is in Oklahoma City, and he makes them as you order them, so he doesn't make them ahead. And when they arrive, the sides are off, and you have to assemble the sides and the cross pieces. Everything comes with it. This afternoon, I took off the 17-tube Midwest chassis that I had on it. So this one I bought because I have a lot of fairly large chassis, and this was the size to get. The way it works is the way I would recommend doing it would be measure the spacing of the mounting holes on your radio so that they fall inside here and sort of preset it. And then these locking pegs go on either side so that it doesn't move. And you set the radio on there and screw it on. You may have to make adapters, brackets, whatever. And then you can work on the top, roll, it moves 30 degrees, increments. And another reason I got this size was because I figured if I could do the largest radios I have, I could also adjust it down for the smaller ones. The only downside to this is that it really dominates your workbench. So either you have to have multiple workbenches or you have to be prepared to knock down, set it up. I'm actually going to make a roll-abound cart to put this on to get it at the right height. And we'll see how that works. This is made in very nicely finished, varnished. This was $55 plus about $20 to $25 for shipping and about a 2 to 3 week waiting time. So I think that's very reasonable for what it is. The smaller one is probably $35. He has a website, radiostands.com. He has an email address. If anybody's interested, they can copy the address. My take on him is he's a very agreeable, honest guy. Gave me updates of how he was progressing. And you shouldn't have any reservation about dealing with him. I haven't heard one negative comment about him on ARF. So if this is what you want to do, you want convenience, you want to be able to work underneath the chassis and then spin it over and get to the IF transformers for alignment and then the RF trimmers underneath. You can do that without having to wrestle with it on the bench. On the other hand, if you like a minimalist approach, you can invest in 4 $2 C-clamps, 2 pieces of Luan or plywood or whatever else you have around. And what you do is you take your radio, lay it on the table until the edge is just overhanging a little bit, and then you C-clamp it underneath, so the jaw is going underneath and the turnbuckle's on the outside. And then you spin it around and do the same thing. So now you have the chassis sitting right side up with these projecting up. And if you desire, you can cant it a little bit. And then when you flip it over, the radio is sitting on these and you can work underneath it. And it costs you almost nothing. And you can make them longer for radios with tall dials or whatever you want. So this is the Cadillac version, and this is the $10 version to do a similar event. So that's my radio stand news. Yes?
Any weight limits for
I have heard of people putting 80-pound radios on this. I think it probably would do that. I would not feel bad about a 50-pound radio. I have a Scott Philharmonic that weighs 65, and I built a special 3/4-inch plywood turner just for that. I don't know if I would trust that on here, but people on the internet say they have put big Philcos, ham receivers, SX42s, that sort of thing on there. Yeah, maybe. The one thing you have to be prepared to do is to deal with the attachment technique that you're going to use for your radio. So this isn't going to suit every radio that you're going to put on it. You're going to wind up with a box full of little bent brackets and screws of different sizes to fit the tapped holes and so forth. So every radio is going to have to be approached with a different technique. But depends on how many radios you're going to do. I find that it's not as many as I used to do. So another thing I wanted to point out, this is an entirely different topic, but we're in a new era here. So we have to deal with the new improved mnemonic. You're all familiar with the color code, and there used to be a mnemonic that was to help you remember. Okay, and it started out bad boys. Okay, well, it's been changed. It's been improved. Okay, so I'm going to speak slowly. Bad boys race our young girls, but Violet generally wins.
How PC, Tom? How PC?
Yes. Okay, so that's about that. All I have is, you want to talk about the Estes?
Yes, please.
Okay, another topic that may be of use to you is the name of Estes Auctions. So a few weeks ago, I called Cletus Estes and left a message for him to call me back, which he did in a couple of days. So I had a 20, 25-minute conversation with him to get an idea of what's involved in commissioning them to dispose of radios. I'm thinking of doing that myself. So what you do is, they're in Ohio, and if you commission them to sell your radios, they send a truck. I think it's a 26-foot box truck with 2 men. I think it takes 2 days for them to get here, 2 days for them to get back, and they plan on a day at the location. I'm sure they would stage that so that they would time it to do multiple pickups depending on the size of the collections. I told him how many that I thought I would initially want to get rid of, and he said, well, that's about a pickup truck full. Well, I was telling him 45 or 50 radios. So it may be a while, a few months, if you decide to have him do that. If you were to have a big collection and you need the whole truck, it would be $1,000 for the whole truck. And then when he puts them in the auction, he keeps 20% of whatever they sell for and sends the rest to you. So if you think, I'm actually thinking $1,000 to get rid of the radio problem, if I didn't get anything back, is a pretty good deal. So if you approach it that way, that he's doing you a service, cleaning out all your stuff that you don't have to worry about now, and he's going to do it for $1,000. And it's gone now, instantly. In one day, it's gone. And then, later on, you may get sort of a rebate. So maybe, depending on what you have to sell and what kind of condition it's in, what demand there is for it, maybe you could get that $1,000 back, or half of that. Not too bad. So I talked to Cletus. Sound like a reasonable guy, casual, flexible. They come and they do an inventory when they survey what he likes to have pictures first. So you could take simple pictures. They don't need to be detailed. You know, one picture is probably good for each radio, or even a group. He suggested putting them in a group. Just take a picture so they have an idea of the space that's going to be needed. I asked him if they only sold good condition radios, not projects. And he said, no, they sell radios that need to be restored as well. So if you have something that needs to be refinished, but it's a good radio and it's solid, I'm sure they would sell that too. They would probably even sell maybe a quality tube tester like a Hickok, maybe parts. So he seems pretty flexible, sounds honest to me. I haven't heard anything negative about him, and he sounded pretty reasonable on the phone. So I have, he has a website. It's pretty simple, just has the contact information and maybe when he's going to have his next auction. So you call him up, leave a message, he calls you back, and you go from there. But I don't know anybody else who does it the way he does it. So think of it this way. Let's just say you're like my situation. I've got too many radios, too many heavy radios in my basement. I carried them down, no problem, but I carried them down a long time ago. I don't want to carry them back up. In fact, it probably would be unwise. So he brings the truck, he brings the manpower, he carries them out, inventories them, wraps them up, and takes them away. You don't do anything. You just give him the money for the truck. So it's pretty ideal as far as I can see. Yeah?
Question. Does he have a website that he sells this on?
No. He has, if you're not familiar with him, he's in Ohio, and they have a big building, and periodically they have auctions where they mix radios from various pickups, the consignments, and I guess flippers and collectors go there and bid on them. And I don't know whether he has lists of what's going to be for sale.
He does when he puts them out. Yeah.
Okay. But that's the way he works, and he's been doing it for what?
Long time. His dad was doing it before.
And it's not his only job. He's a millwright in a steel plant. And he works 12-hour shifts, and he has to work every other weekend. So the auction thing isn't his only job. And he shares it, I think, with his brother and maybe a cousin. Mm-hmm. So he misses out on some meets that happen to fall on weekends where he works. But it's an option I think we all need to keep in mind because...
Tom, you give me 500 and I'll live down the basement.
Really?
No, I'm selling some of my basement.
The thing is, just think of carrying up 5 of your heaviest radios from the basement, and we'll say they're 65 pounds, or 75 pounds, SX28. Tell me how your back's doing. What happens if you injure your back? From my experiences, from what I've heard, backs are hard to repair. It doesn't usually work.
You can sue Halifax Corporation.
No. So the part of the problem is we don't do that enough. So we're not really in shape, and we're older. These guys are younger. They do this all the time. They're probably like moving men, so they're pretty hardy.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for putting a dent in our auction this evening. Still attached. They're still attached. Okay. On a more cheery note, how about next? Who's up next? What do we got? Bruce, I think you've been outdone. Wait, there's a guy behind you. Right, what do you got? No, Bruce, press it. You gave me the old, you're it. Whoa.
Okay,
You are?
I'm on. What's on? Oh, Bruce Ingram. Don't. docent. I'm on tomorrow. So if you'd like a tour of the museum, come by tomorrow. We'll tell you all about it. But you wouldn't find one of these in it. Okay? What this is a radio in a box. Okay? In the past, when I brought in a radio in a box, I had built both the radio and the box. Okay? You may remember some of the regen sets. But this is just a plain old All-American 5. So why would I bother dragging it all the way up here on a rainy night unless there was something different about this All-American radio?
Pulling our tail here.
Okay. Hey?
I think you're pulling our tail here.
Well, almost. Sold by Sears Roebuck, 1941. All-American 5 AC, DC set. But I would not have brought it up here unless there was something different about it. So what's different? I'll give you a clue. I'll give you one clue. The difference is hiding in plain sight. It's a left-hander. The dial is on the left. It's for left-handed people. You can check out the museum here. You won't find one. You can check your supply at home. Let me know if you can find a left-hander. They're very rare. It's a left-hand radio. Thank you. Okay. Give me back.
Thank you, folks. That was there you go. Radio for left-handed people. Very good. Ray Chase. Here he comes. Now listen, I didn't mean it that way. Come on, get in here. Where are you up to?
Well, I broke a rule. I brought two things, but they're both vacuum tubes, so maybe that's okay. Now, this doesn't look like much, but this is the second pentagrid converter that was invented. Many of you remember Jim Whartonby, who's now in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And he worked for RCA, and he salvaged this as it was going in the RCA dumpster. But the pentagrid converter, the first one, was invented at RCA in 1933, and I have some paperwork over there. I forgot the guy's name, but kind of an interesting story. He worked for the guy who patented this, and as he was developing it, he was trying different windings on the grid wires, and he kept taking wires off, and finally he had no grid wires, and the thing worked better. So, he just didn't know any better. He just kept trying with that, and everybody else said, "You're crazy." But it worked. So he was the first one to invent the pentagrid converter, and this one was invented by his boss, which is a slight variation a little bit later, both in 1933. And as many of you know, the pentagrid converter made possible to have a 5-tube superhet. And I had, pardon?
What's number is the tube?
It doesn't have a number. This was, the tubes were the 6A7 and the 2A7, I think. But this has got a 5-pin base with a couple of extra wires coming out of the sockets. So this is kind of a rare artifact. Jim brought me a batch of tubes, mostly radar tubes, a couple of years ago. And I've kept this because we really don't have a place to properly display it. And eventually we'll probably have enough room to have a real historic vacuum tube display. So thanks to Jim Whartonby on this. And
George has got a question.
yeah,
Are you implying that it was invented twice by two people independently?
different. They you know, it's one of those things. There's two patents, and they're slightly different. You know, for different wording, for different reasons. You know. So anyway, this thing is kind of heavy. This is a carcinotron. A carcinotron. I mean, you know, I got all kinds of weird tubes. This is a backward wave oscillator, and I'm still not quite sure how it works. It's a cross field tube, so it takes a magnetic field that operates on the electron stream. But this was developed about in the 50s and 60s, and carcinotron is a trade name, and it was penned because it's cancer for radar. Because this is used in radar jammers, because this thing will put out a lot of power over a wide frequency range, and it's very agile. You can change the frequency electrically, and this one also has hydraulic actuation, so you can change it. You can change it. You can change frequency very widely, quickly. And this is oil cooled. So it's like a magnetron, but it puts out continuous waves, and it'll change frequency as fast as you can, you know, change the voltage. And so it can blanket a radar scope with jamming and cause the radar operator to change frequency as fast.
Early 60s? It says 62 on it?
Yeah, yeah. These are kind of rare. They were highly classified. It's difficult to get information on them. And you get some wild stories. The oil that is used is a very good skin lotion. And I heard stories from people who were doing service on the aircraft, and the gals in the office would say, "Hey, bring us some of that oil. It's really great skin lotion." So this is just another example of the wild kind of stuff that you can get in vacuum tubes, particularly in the microwave range. And this not this tube, but a backward wave oscillator can operate up in the teragigahertz range, up in the 200, 300 gigahertz.
Ray, you saw the article in Tube Collector a couple months ago, right, about that tube?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there's a book over there. The fellow who wrote a book on the carcinotrons recently got the Houck Award from AWA. So we're looking forward someday to be able to set up a really good vacuum tube historical exhibit. Yes, Robert?
You said that was used for jamming?
Yes.
Was it 2 to 1 frequency, or was it a broad band of jamming frequencies? Or was it a lot of frequencies?
No, it's single frequency, but it can move so fast that the radar scopes have a lot of persistence, so it looks like the whole scope is filled with jamming. And if you try to change frequency to counter that jamming, if this guy is a good operator, he can follow it just as fast.
Was that used in jamming airplanes?
It's primarily used in aircraft to jam somebody from seeing you on the ground or sending a missile up to zap you.
A friend of mine ran Calverton out in Long Island. They had the AE6, and I was privy to a lot of information that you're not supposed to know. But he had the AE6 had a tail fin on top that he said if that plane was in the air, he would jam everything on the East Coast. That's how powerful. So I'm just wondering if that's the actual tool or something like it that was used in that type of an aircraft.
It would be something like this. The backward wave oscillator, or carcinotron, is a primary device used to jam radars. Yeah. And unfortunately, this is the only one I have. When we cleaned out a warehouse up in Waterbury, Connecticut, these were laying all over the place, but I only managed to grab one. Okay.
Yes. Oh, sure, go ahead. Who's going to take pictures of you, though? How about Lou? Lou, you take a picture?
That's all right.
Camera shot.
Okay. Well, while we're on the subject,
Wait a minute. Who are you?
I'm Marv Beeferman, and while we're on the subject of strange tubes, I picked up this tube many years ago, and I sort of put it in a nice mounting, and I did a little research on it, and it's very strange. It's called a filtron, and the filament, instead of being wound in a spiral, it's sort of like wound haphazardly within the tube. And instead of having straight plates around it, the plates are like made out of nodes, of metallic nodes, and they sort of combine together and into one filament, into one large plate, only they're sort of separated. And what I did was I got the information on how much voltage this thing needs, so I managed to put a little battery in it. And
This is called a filtron?
filtron, right.
Nothing to do with our former president, Phil Bortzis?
No. Wait a minute. Let me.
Fluorotron, which is another display.
Marvitrons.
And when you light up the filament, that's what it looks like. It's kind of rare, and
It's like those lights, those LED lights are so like.
yeah, it's kind of rare. They're very. This is the only one I've seen, but you might be able to find one if you're shopping in Home Goods, because I've told that they're there also, and so keep your eye on it, and keep your eye for it. But it's.
I got one of the white bottles.
This is still April, but it's not April 1st. It should be April 1st.
You know, it was almost believable until you turned it on.
The city said couldn't use its own Marvitron because we're too keen on that.
Yeah. So there it is. I'll let it stay lit for those that want to oogle on it. So that's my story,
And you're sticking to it.
and I'm sticking to it.
Don't go away with the apparatus stuck on you, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You are slick. Okay, who's next? Okay, Paul.
You guys all have more in your basement than throw out. But I saw it at the millstone yesterday. All Walmart. In Millstone. I got there late in the afternoon, Thursday. Walked around the whole thing for a while, came back, and I had in my mind I'm going to get something I haven't seen before. And this is a home brew. It's the old AA1. One triode. It's got a crystal detector for some reason. The boxes came with it that the parts were originally in. So I'm going to have some fun, and I don't know if I'll get into that DX context or not with it.
But the important question is, Paul,
Yeah,
did you get the NJARC discount?
I did.
All right, very good. Good to hear that.
Yes. Same price everybody else got.
We'll have to speak to management about that.
So it would work a lot better if you used one of those tubes.
They'd probably have a lot more output. And if I put that other one in here, it'd get more attention at Christmas. But it looks to be in good shape. I mean, the guy did a nice job wiring it and all that stuff, so I'm going to enjoy it and see if I can get to play.
All right, Paul, before you go.
Yeah, get your mic.
Thanks, Paul. You know, I was thinking about things like this. I like collecting home brews. But unfortunately, they always seem to be so anonymous. You know, you would hope that maybe somebody put an initial or a date or something on it, you know, just to know a little bit about the history or something like that. You know. Okay, next. Uh-oh. Here comes Mr. Snellman.
Oh, we know what you got.
Who we have to thank for not entering the DX contest with an ultralight. And this ain't any ultralight coming out.
No, this is not. And it's really not to show off the radio. But I can do that later.
What's it, the plastic case?
Well,
Please.
Dave Snellman. Okay. This is a Zenith R7000, the last transistorized transoceanic that they made. But I want to show, this is the dust cover, which was, I'm not sure an option or that, but this will fit any of the 7000 series radios. Now, that's the one item. The second thing is, you can twist. This has a swivel mount. This is an official Zenith option. This one doesn't exactly work the way it's supposed to, but this was something you could fasten to the deck of your yacht, and then you could mount the radio on this, and you could do a little direction finding if need be. So it does have a number, and I found the number in the book on the transoceanics. I should have probably marked the space, but I didn't. Anywho, this was in here, and it was one of the few options they had for these radios, called the Swivel Base. Now, it's shown in the book on the earlier 7000, but the model number is, by the way, just in case you're looking for them, S75893. But these are very rare because I've never seen any. When I got it on eBay, but these radios are actually fairly rare. There were 25,000. It was made for 3 years. There was 25,000 made each year, but this is the last one. I got this at an auction down in Maryland in October, and there's kind of a story behind this radio. I have one and I showed it in the past. This is not that radio. This is this newer one. This one, that's how I found it. With the exception, this cover was not attached. This was listed as being a 7000-1. And I said, well, I don't want a 7000-1 because the 7000-1 has a tuning belt. So it's not, this one has a gear driven, so you get no backlash on your tuning. So I got it home, I looked in the model, sure enough it's a later model. So well, that's a plus. And I've stuck some batteries in it. It works fine, flawlessly on every band. And I only paid $50 for it. Anyone who has looked at these on eBay, you'll see $500, $700, $1,000. And actually I saw one listed, it was new in the box supposedly, and they wanted over $5,000 for it. Now, the funny thing is, when it first came out, this was in 1981, it was already obsolete because Sony had already made out their 2001, which is a digital readout, and it was less expensive than the list price of $379 on this. Wow. When, of course, Zenith got out of the business, I've heard stories of dealers on closeout selling them for $50. I didn't know any dealers at that time, so I never got one for $50, but I got this one for $50. And the reason I bought it, the one I had brought here the last time, my problem was the on and off switch. And I literally bought it to buy the on and off switch. But needless to say, this was in much better shape than the one I have, so I'm leaving the on and off switch in here and just cleaned this one up a little better. And all I had to do was find the right pin to put the front cover back on. So that's it. And again, I want to thank Glenn Newman for giving me the sales brochure that lists some of the features on this particular radio. And you can actually, if anyone who wants to look, they can look at the, there's the auction price, $50, the last mark auction. Another interesting thing I had found, this is very rare. This is a copy of the official Zenith service manual for the 2 WKR70, which is the 7000-1, and this is also for the 2 WMR70. This has both of them in there. I've heard rumors that when Zenith decided to stop making this, they literally trashed all the documentation on it. So someone managed to get a copy of this. I got this on eBay also. So that's my story. No problem.
Okay, who do we have next?
Well, I actually brought rules too. I brought two things as well. So, who am I? Hold on, let me get my driver's license. My name is Darren Hoffman. Anybody in here have a three-way portable in your collection? Maybe somebody? Okay. Well, you could take your three-way portable in your car, truck, on a train, on a plane. You could take it to the beach, and it might be an RCA. But what if you really, really, really liked RCA stuff, and you kind of wanted to let everybody know, and you're going to the beach with your three-way portable? You can have your RCA beach towel. Which is upside down, by the way. That's all right. Now, there's something wrong with what I just said, because after 1969, there wouldn't have been too many three-way portables, but there's your RCA beach towel, right? A genuine RCA beach towel that haven't seen too many of them, but it's made in USA, too.
USA.
Yeah, it's old enough, it's probably from the... Actually, the way I understand it, these were given out to employees. And I actually found this a while back at an estate sale. And I thought it was pretty neat. The other item I brought is a magazine, which is kind of weird. It's kind of the only one I ever saw, but when I looked them up online, apparently they somewhat collectible because people pay good money for them. But it's JEI Magazine, which is Japan Electronic Industry Magazine, written in Jinglish. Now, Jinglish is one of those interesting languages. Does anybody in here know about Jinglish? Jinglish is Japanese trying to write English with Japanese grammar and interpretation.
The first edition of every service manual.
Yeah. But this is from 1963, okay? And this lady on the cover is picking up a National Panasonic TV. There's a guy on YouTube that goes crazy over this TV and talks about how rare it is. And there it is on the cover of the magazine. But there's really interesting stuff in here. Lots of advertisements for these Japanese companies you've never heard of, like Lafayette. No, there are advertisements in here for Japanese test equipment, signal generators and such, that if you look at it, you say, oh, look at the Lafayette signal. I guarantee you this magazine circulated the executive offices over in Syosset at Lafayette, because in here you see half the test equipment and half of the other stuff they sold in their catalog under their name, and Allied and all the other companies that were importing the stuff from Japan. And they would give these out at trade shows and everything else, and it's really kind of a neat piece. And there's, you know, if you want to look through it, you're welcome to. There's kind of some interesting stuff in it. I love the way they kind of took the familiar American magazine.
Looks very lifey.
Very lifey kind of, yeah. And yeah, so that's kind of what I have to show you there. So. Thank you.
Darren, did you happen to pick up that towel at the estate sale you're running today?
No, it came from one a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Next.
I brought this in because there was a lot of, you know, on the emails that I get, there was a lot of chatter going on about this particular unit, which is a remote control unit RM29A. So I brought this in just to show it to you. What this was used for is to hook up to about 7 SCR sets. I have a BC 654, which is part of the SCR 284, and this is part of my set. What this was designed to do was to be a connection between the field telephones, which were EE8s, I believe, and they would be scattered around a battle area or in a conflict, and they'd have all these EE8 phones, and they would feed into a switchboard. And the switchboard was called the BO71 or BO72. So all the phones fed into that. That, in turn, one line coming out of the switchboard fed into this. And what you had here was this then fed into or plugged into those 7 sets. So you had a jack that went into the BC654, one into the mic jack, a plug, jack, and then the other one went into the phone jack. So this was a connection. There was a battery in here which was used to supply current to the carbon microphone. And what you had was a 3-position switch. In the radio position, you could just pick this up and just key it, and this would key the transmitter to go on. If you didn't key the transmitter on, of course, you received it. So that's how that worked in the radio position. This phone, I believe, is a little bit older than the ones they used in World War II. In World War II, they had a T17 mic and another earphone set, T19, I believe. But this is what I got with it. In the through transmission, in the through position, you had anything coming in through those EE8 field phones, which then went to the switchboard, was fed to here. And you could listen, you could communicate. And to go to the transmitter through the field sets, you push this, which was an anti-howl position, which keyed the transmitter, but at the same time disabled the feedback that you might get to the earphone. In the telephone position, it acted just as a telephone. You couldn't key the transmitter, but this was a link to any of the field sets that were out in the field. 2 things I just want to mention is I cranked this up. I didn't get much. You're supposed to get at 3 cranks a second. You're supposed to get 90 volts. On this one, which is new old stock, I could only get about a half a volt, maybe a volt. So I suspect that it's an AC generator. So I suspect that might be a little corroded or a little full of grease. The other thing that I don't understand, because I researched this a little today, that somebody on one of the blurbs on the internet said that this was another reason they had this was to have this remote from the transmitter so that if the Axis powers or the enemy homed in on your transmitter, they could mortar it and take it out. But I would think that you would have to have extension cords for this, and I don't know if that's possible to have a large extension cord to really put this away. So
what era is this then?
This is World. Well, actually, funny you should mention it. This was in World War II. Now there was a tag on the bottom, which is interesting, because the manufacture date is 43. So this was on the bottom of this case, and maybe some of you fellows can know what this means. It says stock number, and it says PIC date 11/8/44. What is PIC?
Dick, anybody have it?
PIC
Military
date?
PIC? Al Clay's is not here this evening.
Yeah, and then the other thing underneath it, the other little blurb underneath it is PL date 8/28/51. This is a packing list for the RM29. So these were in World War II vintage, but they went beyond it.
Went into the Korean War.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And like you say, it's NOS, never used.
No, this. Yeah. So I just thought, as much as you were talking about it, might be interesting. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, changed the radio from the receiver to a transmitter. What's that?
First, the talk actually did the TR in the radio.
It actually controlled the transmitter, the BC650, or any of the other 7. I have an SCR 178 that works with that. Yeah. And that radio is from BC 41. And so, as long as you have an input for the phone and the night, it'll work with this or the T17 or the 19.
All right, thanks, Doctor. Who's next?
I am Dave Sika,
And I also brought a multi-part show and tell. I brought 3 things to show you tonight. And the main one, and two tiny little afterthoughts here. The main one did not arrive in working condition, so we'll wait until the next show and tell, and we'll get around to that. That's the cool one. But I was looking around and to see what has added itself to the collection of useful stuff over the last month or so. And there were 2 things. There was a little bit of chatter on the internet. People were talking about this. It's called the Rolton E500. It's a portable digital audio player. And it sounded interesting enough that I ordered one. And the 2 things I got here are neither antique nor radio. But this is a Bluetooth speaker. It's a 6-watt sound. And I think it's not like those, you buy one of those stereo sets and it says, 3,000 watts peak music power. But this has got like a 5-volt power supply in here at an amp or 2. And I think it puts out an honest 6 watts. But it actually, oh no, I can show this here. It has a radio in it. It has an FM radio. It has it'll hook up to your phone or whatever for your Bluetooth. And it's also got a little slot in the top to put a little micro SD card, and you can put like 900 hours of MP3 music on here. It's a little MP3 music player. And
has an input on the side.
A little 1-inch speaker. I mean, it puts out a respectable amount of sound. So I was impressed. In fact, I was impressed enough that some lucky winner is going to get one of these at the holiday party too, because I liked it enough that I ordered another one immediately. It's pretty cool, I thought. Anyway, and this is definitely neither an antique or a radio, but I was at the dollar store the other day, which is where I do most of my food shopping, and maybe not, and for $1, this is pretty impressive. They got these damn LEDs now, and for working on your radio, or for changing your oil at night, or anything stupid you're going to do, it's not too shabby for $1, I got to say. So it's with the batteries, yeah. So and I guess you could use it while you're riding your bike at night too. But anyway, so that's it. Part 1 to be continued next time. Hey? Dial 3.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody else? Anyone else? No? Okay, all right. Let me just make a few announcements. Our next meeting is May 17th here. And the day after, the 18th, happens to be our spring repair clinic. So I know we're piggybacking like that, but if I can do it, you can do it. And obviously we're putting in May 17th because Kutztown is May 10th and 11th, which is when I'll probably see all of you anyway. Okay? And again, it's not as good as our own shows, but grin and bear it and just support the Delaware Valley Club. Okay, we still have stuff for sale in the back. We are now to commence with an auction, and that auction is to do with the Stanley Suburban Subhand estate and boat anchors that were gifted to us from good guy Joe Connor. So I will need help in the auction, and I'm sure we have auctioneers ready and waiting. I see that. Great. Can we pan the camera over there or just leave it on?
Shoot that on my phone, I guess.
All right. Well, I mean, you don't have to do it. All right. If you're not attending the auction, thank you for coming. Stay home, but please stay because there's a lot of good stuff here.